The last was the Repco Classic in 1979. The winner then was Peter Brock, and Brock was back again today for another go at the endurance event.
There was hardly walking room in the Queen Street Mall at lunchtime today as 176 entries prepared for the start of the Round Australia trial. Peter Brock won the last time the trial was held back in 1979. That's been his one and only rally victory, but as reigning champion was honoured with the #1 starting position. Not impressed about starting second was Commodore team driver Ross Dunkerton, who, as 5 times Australian rally champion, believed he deserved the pole. Well, the rules, Dean, that you should be starting off the #1 rank, is that right?
Well, that's how the rules should be, but...
I'm not worried about it. The one I've got to beat in this event is myself. You can't really say, I'm going to beat this other person. You've got to find a way of I suppose, coming to terms with the outback of Australia.
Dunkerton, though, had a light-hearted solution.
I think he's going to allow me to start on the first row of the grid in Bathurst.
The rally is the first Round Australia event ever to start from Brisbane. The opening section sees the field make its way to Sydney, and 20 days from now, the Gold Coast will welcome what's left of the field.
But that's what he's now doing in the Mobil Around Australia rally. Given the luck they've had in the first night of the 19,000-kilometre event, Brock and co-driver Dave Boddy must have run over more than one black cat as they led the 178-car field away from the start in Brisbane yesterday.
Peter Brock won the last Round Australia rally, but he's going to have to work very hard to repeat that feat. Last night, as the rally field raced against the clock along North Coast forest trails, Brock had everything go wrong. First a puncture, then he slid into a ditch, but was rescued by teammate Ross Dunkerton. But worse, a stick flicked up and punched a hole in the radiator of the factory-back Commodore. Brock and Boddy then had to fit a new radiator by torchlight. And then a valve spring broke.
Everything that could have gone wrong has really gone wrong. And what I'm presuming, of course, is that day one, we've got all that stuff out of the way, and we don't have to go through that exercise again.
As competitors snatched a few hours rest at a break in Newcastle, it's already obvious the 19-day event will be a very solid test of both crews and their vehicles. Predictably, conventional rally experience is showing out in the forest stages. Mitsubishi Lancer driver David Officer is leading, Michael Guest in the Galant VR4 is in second place, followed by Ross Dunkerton in a Holden. But some of the off-road specialists in four-wheel drive vehicles could have a big advantage when the rally reaches Central Australia. Brock just sees the road ahead as a chance to make up some of the 40 minutes he's lost on the leader. One outstanding performance has come from a Newcastle driver in a 22-year-old Leyland P76. Harold Maloney started in position 80. He's now running 16th on the road. The field is due in Melbourne tomorrow night. Jim Sullivan, NBN News.
Ask in the Mobil Round Australia trial, the man they call Peter Perfect had a less than perfect start to his Round Australia trial defence.
Brock's woes began when he ran off the road near Coffs Harbour last night. Fortunately, Holden teammate Ross Dunkerton was able to haul him back into the rally. Later, Brock would hole his radiator and blew the head gasket, but would make it to Sydney 61 minutes behind the leader.
Everything that could have gone wrong has really gone wrong. And what I'm presuming, of course, is that day one, we've got all that stuff out of the way, and we don't have to go through that exercise again.
While Brock had his problems, Melbourne husband and wife team David and Kate Officer made the running throughout the first leg, arriving in Sydney with a lead of over 3 minutes. Michael Guest drove solidly into second place, 1 minute 15 seconds ahead of Ross Dunkerton in the first of the Holden Commodores. After the overnight rest break tonight, the leading crews depart Parramatta at 4 tomorrow morning for the long second leg to Melbourne.
And ahead late this afternoon, 2 Mitsubishi drivers were fighting for the lead as the rally continued on its 20,000-kilometre journey around Australia.
The crews set out early this morning from Parramatta, heading for the forests around Canberra and then over the border into Victoria. A late charge through the Wattigan Mountains yesterday by Newcastle hotshot Michael Guest in a Galant VR4 took him into second place, behind Victoria's David Officer driving a Lancer. The 2 Mitsubishi drivers today maintained the pace through the pine forests near Canberra. By mid-afternoon, Officer and his co-driver wife Kate had a clear lead of nearly 3.5 minutes ahead of Commodore drivers Ross Dunkerton and Ed Ordinsky going into the Victorian special stages. Tomorrow, the 170 crews set out for the Western Victorian deserts and into South Australia.
Road into a ditch on the stage around Puckapunyal Army Base near Melbourne. Duncan is hauled back onto the road by his teammate Peter Brock, losing over 20 minutes and dropping from 3rd to 27th.
The Officers' Lancer now has a lead of only 2 minutes 50 seconds over Guest, their fellow Mitsubishi competitor, as the rally moves into South Australia before a weekend onslaught on the outback roads of the centre. Among the casualties today was leading Commodore driver Ross Dunkerton, whose collision with a kangaroo cost him a wheel and several minutes, dropping him to 27th place. Heading the charge of the big four-wheel drives is Bruce Garland, now 5th outright in his Jackaroo, while Hal Maloney in a veteran P76 is continuing his charge up the field to be in 14th place this evening. Peter Brock's also continuing to peg back the field after his disastrous first day in the forests of northern New South Wales. Tonight he's in 31st spot. Jim Sullivan, NBN News.
Peter Brock hauled him back onto the road, and after limping to the service break, losing 20 minutes, Dunkerton was back in the rally, dropping from 3rd to 21st. The 75 car still in the trial headed for Adelaide on this, the 3rd leg of the 19,000 kilometre event, battling on with more than 15,000 kilometres still ahead of them. Brock continued to climb back from his early problems, moving up today from 41st to 27th as the trial moved away from the forests and into the wide open stages of Victoria's Mallee.
It's going very well. I'm right back down the field here a bit, but I'm having a ball because it means I've got to know all these guys and the old rockets and what have you, and they move over and let me through, and we all have guesses as to how soon I'm going to catch them down to special stage and what have you. So we're having a lot of fun. We really are.
While the turbocharged cars of David Officer and Michael Guest continued to hold the lead, the big four-wheel drive wagons are looming as the dangers, with Bruce Garland leading the charge in his Holden Jackaroo in 6th place. And with tougher conditions ahead, they'll be in their element. The creek crossings became more numerous, and the station tracks rougher as crews had a taste of things to come today. After an overnight halt in Adelaide tonight, the crews strike out into the outback tomorrow for a tough 32-hour leg to Alice Springs, when the real complexion of the trial is expected to be revealed.
Kalgoorlie today with Ross Dunkerton back in the top 10. It's a remarkable climb up the ladder considering he lost a wheel earlier in one of the event's special stages.
Ross Dunkerton started the day in Central Australia lagging way behind the field in 14th place. But after a helter-skelter day of hard driving, he pulled up to 8th.
Very high speed. We've trained about 200 kilometres an hour down one particular fence line, but then failed to make the corner at the end. So hence we've got a bit of a damaged windscreen there.
But Dunkerton's still well adrift of the leaders as the drivers spend the night in chilly Kalgoorlie. However, he holds a 12-minute cushion over pre-race favourite Peter Brock, who also had major troubles early in the event. For Peter Perfect, a hard day at the office.
A lot of ruts. I think recent rains have caused a lot of washouts, and as far as I'm concerned, that's good because this trial should be all about reliability. It should be rough.
The field moves from Kalgoorlie to Perth tomorrow. Michael Guest defending his lead over Ed Ordinsky.
The contention really in the Mobil Round Australia Rally, Brocky collided with another car, then smashed into trees on the second of 4 special stages on day 6.
The end of Peter Brock's hopes of winning his second Round Australia trial. His badly damaged car towed into the end of the second stage of 4 on day 6 of the 18,500 kilometre rally.
Superficial damage, the left-hand front fender and bonnet. The bloke stopped in front of us, spun in the middle of a long, far straight, and I just caught his left-hand rear bumper bar.
And so, a frantic race against time at Coolgardie. Get the Commodore back in working order, spare parts at a premium.
We need a Commodore. We need a Commodore.
The situation called for some inventive mechanics and panel beating. The end result, Brock up and running again for stage 3 with the 4th just east of Perth in the evening. Meantime, young New South Welshman Michael Guest continues to show the way, even he admitting it's no place for the faint-hearted.
Dead straight with little chicanes halfway down the straights, and we're doing upwards of 180 kilometres an hour, and the scrub's touching the car either side. It was pretty exciting, actually.
Round Australia trial tonight, the competitors are heading up the northwest of Australia towards Broome.
There's precious little time to put your feet up in a Round Australia trial. Early this morning, Peter Brock on the way again, putting behind him yesterday's dramas which saw him slip to 23rd, 2.5 hours behind the leader. And today, just a gentle run to Broome.
I think it's reminiscent of the old 53 trials of the horror stretches. There's some very, very rough roads.
Brock's had enough of trouble and the miraculous repairs that have kept his Commodore in the event. This morning, a special message waiting on his car from arch-rival Ross Dunkerton.
We've just left a bit of spray paint there for him to touch it up.
Rest and resuscitation at Geraldton after one special stage this morning, where some drivers were in a real hurry.
In fact, we caught the car that's leading the event and overtook it on the stage. And then when it got smoother towards the end, he repassed us, so it was quite good fun.
Then east of Mullewa, stage 2, road conditions making for some tricky driving. Once again, the Round Australia trial proving itself to be a true test of driver and machine in all conditions.
Salmon in their Galant VR4 have lost their lead in the Round Australia trial after a series of mechanical problems early today.
Guest, who'd held a lead of up to 10 minutes since the trial left Port Augusta early last week, had alternator failure halfway through a stage near Katherine, as well as suspension problems, a flat tyre and a battery fire.
We've still got to replace the alternator. We're just going to run on the battery through here. Just the alternator's packed it in. We replaced one and then the new one's packed it in as well, like straight away.
Taking over the lead is the Commodore crew of Ed Ordinsky and Ross Runnels, whose consistency is apparently paying off, with a margin of 12 minutes over Guest and Salmon.
Just nursing along there in second place, hoping that someone else has some problems, and we're yet to see Michael come out of the stage.
Stephen Ashton and Roe Nixon are clinging precariously to third place in their Mitsubishi Lancer, under pressure from Bruce Garland and Harry Suzuki in their Holden Jackaroo, slipping into the top 5 ahead of Moree farmer Peter Glennie, who's also suffered major electrical problems, are Ross Dunkerton and Noel Richards in another V6 Commodore. An incredible fight back from there plummet to 32nd place after an off-road excursion last week. The crews are scheduled to arrive in Darwin this evening, with the finish of the event on the Gold Coast on Sunday.
And in the Round Australia trial, the favourite for the race limped into Mount Isa with a hold piston. That's not all. The 5-times champion of the event also suffered a flat tyre and a broken shock absorber in the race to the mining capital. South Australian Ed Ordinsky and Victorian Ross Runnels still lead, with Mitsubishi driver Michael Guest second, and he has great support. Mitsubishi dealers all the way down to the finish on the Gold Coast will be open 24 hours for his car's service and spare parts.
26-year-old Guest from Newcastle lost the lead earlier this week in the Northern Territory to South Australian Holden driver Ed Ordinsky. Starting second on the road out of Mount Isa today, Guest was clearly fired up and caught Ordinsky's V6 Commodore halfway into a 75-kilometre special stage east of Mount Isa, but was unable to overtake for 20 kilometres. By the end of the stage, he'd recovered 1.5 of the 23-minute lead Ordinsky had held.
Because of the dust, we had a bit of trouble trying to get past him, and called him a few times and he wasn't real keen to let us pass, which I was starting to get a bit annoyed about, so we ended up passing him at a gate, shot past him about 6k from the finish, and then pulled out another half a minute nearly in the last 6k, so it shows how much quicker we're going through the whole stage, and gets us a little bit closer, but a lot of work to do yet, so we'll wait and see.
Fastest on that stage was Moree's Peter Glennie in his Toyota Land Cruiser, who pipped Guest by 24 seconds. Competitors will reach Townsville tonight before the overnight run down the coast to Brisbane and the finish at Surfers Paradise on Sunday.
Australia trial are developing into a bitter struggle between a factory-backed Commodore and a privately run Mitsubishi. The Mitsubishi, a Galant VR4 driven by Newcastle's Michael Guest, is tonight in the box seat of the 20,000-kilometre trial. His arch-rival Commodore driver Ed Ordinsky is still clinging to the lead, but suffering engine problems on the final run from Townsville to Brisbane.
Guest, last night 23 minutes behind Ordinsky, has been clearly the fastest on today's special stages down the North Queensland coast. Guest is pounding his battered Galant in a make-or-break effort to win the trial. Also hovering, waiting for either Ordinsky or Guest to fall by the wayside, is Victorian Steve Ashton running a Lancer, the only other conventional rally car at the head of the field. Hard on their heels is a mob of big four-wheel drives, led by Bruce Garland and Peter Glennie, both well placed to move into top 3 contention. The event finishes on the Gold Coast on Sunday.
And 2 cars in the historic class of Ford Falcon XT GT and Hal Maloney's P76 are running well after the 4-wheel drives in 14th and 15th place outright.
Tomorrow, with rally leader Ed Ordinsky hoping his Holden Commodore can last the final stage. Ordinsky heads the field by just 10 minutes after his Commodore lost third gear during the latter stage in the Glasshouse Mountains on the Sunshine Coast. His main rival in a Mitsubishi VR4 is Michael Guest. He'll need to continue today's fast times to have any chance of cutting into that 10-minute lead.